How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Tales from the Darkside. This is Season 2, Episode 7, and this one's entitled The Devil's Advocate. The last episode was The Satanic Piano, and now we're going on to The Devil's Advocate, kind of a little devil marathon there. Anyway, this is from November 10th, 1985, directed by Michael Gornick and stars Jerry Stiller. Jerry Stiller, you may know as George's dad from Seinfeld. This is about 5 years or so before Seinfeld would come out, so good to see an earlier performance from him. Always really great, and he does get to use some of his classic anger and yelling in this episode. This episode was written by George A. Romero. George A. Romero, Night of the Living Dead, Creep Show, also series creator for Tales from the Darkside. So always good to see him pop up. He actually wrote the pilot episode, Trick or Treat, and now this is his second episode that he wrote. Great to see him back. Always gotta love a Romero project. Anyway, this episode is about a talk show host, Luther Mandrake, aka the Devil's Advocate, hence the title. And people call into him, tell him about their problems, and he tells them off. He yells at people, quit whining, quit complaining, what's wrong with you people, what's wrong with the world? Overall, a real ball of anger there. However, eventually, he'll start to get some strange phone calls and realize the world around him is changing. And this is a really fun episode. This is another good example of a Tales from the Darkside bottle episode. Bottle episode, one set, and essentially one character. You do get to see his technician for a little bit, but other than that, this is primarily Jerry Stiller in a room reacting to phone calls, and one actor, one set. A lot of shows couldn't do that, but Darkside could. Strong performance, strong writing. Darkside really shines with its budgetary use when it does really classic bottle episodes like this. Also, it's a character study. You get the classic angry character, grumpy old man gets his comeuppance, right? A classic formula for anthology horror, but here you get to see why he's angry and how he became who he is, but also the problems with the situation that he's in as well, So it's not just angry, evil old man gets his comeuppance. We see why he is and what's the problem. So I do like it's better written than a lot of them, And it also talks very much about anger, how, yes, there are terrible things in the world, what's wrong with people, what's wrong with the world, but you see that when you give in to anger too much, when you let it eat you, then it hurts you. It doesn't hurt the things that you're mad at. And this episode doesn't hide and say that there aren't anything wrong with the world. There definitely are problems out there, things that need fixing. But when all you do is yell and complain about it, you're not hurting anyone but yourself, and you're seeing this guy who's given into that so long, and just the absolute destruction that it's wreaked upon him and his psyche. And another thing with this episode is I talk a lot about how a lot of these Darkside episodes, their themes hold up really well today. And then this is another one of them. Back in the day, you had all these guys on radio that would have personalities like this and people would tune into them. And they're still around, but nowadays there's much more platforms in the internet age, and there are just a ton of people on the internet just feeding into this anger. And I feel like this is a thing that's gotten bigger over time and definitely stayed more relevant. And yes, there are some things that are horrible, some things that need to change, but there's a difference between working on them and getting angry about them, and I think that's part of what this episode's about. Anger, and it does hold up. But anyway, definitely recommend this episode. I mean, Jerry Stiller and George Romero, that's great. A classic example of a bottle episode and just really well written. And it does have a pretty interesting final end bit. I won't spoil the end for you, obviously, but it does leave the character at a very interesting place when we get there, Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and dive a little deeper into the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, so I'll be avoiding the end bits. But I do want to analyze the episode and point out a few key plots. Anyway, we open up with the radio host, Luther Mandrake, the devil's advocate, running into the radio station, almost missing his show. He's running late, and we find out why he's running late. Turns out he went down to his car this morning, and there was a dead body in his car. Some stranger had crawled into his car and died there, and he called the police, and the police took their time getting there, and when they got there, were questioning him, kind of suspecting that he had something to do with it, and that made him really angry. And that's sort of the thing, is you go down and you find a dead body in your car, most people's reaction would be shock, I can't believe this is crazy. But not Mandrake. His reaction is anger. How dare somebody climb into my car and then die? You can't do that. You can't die in my car. I thought that was a funny reaction. And then he's complaining about the cops. Look, I have a show to do. I haven't missed a show in 13 years. And they don't care because they suspect him, And really, that is their job. Someone stranger dies in your car. Okay, we have some questions for you. But he opens up his show, he tells the story, and he says, who wants to call in and complain about cops? So yeah, he's really just, instead of shock, anger. I don't think he can be shocked anymore. He expects so little from the world. He's just angry at this point. But of course, he can't have the satisfaction of someone, wanting to talk about what he wants to talk about. Instead, they're going to be talking about their problems, and he's not going to be super sympathetic. The first lady that calls in, and this is a good example of his show, she's saying, my husband was laid off of work. He was a steam fitter for 24 years, and he just got laid off. And rather than sympathy, he says, you should thank the company. He was a steam fitter for 24 years. I couldn't do that job that long. Why did he stick around such a terrible job? And then he says, you should go out for dinner. You should celebrate. I'll pay for it. But then he says, I won't pay for it directly. I mean, I pay my taxes, and my taxes will pay your husband's unemployment check. So he's really digging in there, And she starts to cry, and he's like, why did you even call in, lady? And the lady goes, I didn't want to, but a neighbor lady convinced me to do it. And he goes, a neighbor lady? What, does the neighbor lady control your life? Do you do everything she says to do? So, yeah, I mean, it really almost seems like an angry principal at this point. But she says, and this kind of gets to the key of Jerry Stiller's character, you can't say that to me, I'm a human being. Why can't I say that to you? I'm a human being too. I'm a human being who's fed up with the human condition. I'm a human being, but I don't want to be anymore. So yeah, fed up with life, fed up with everything, hates being here. But anyway, he moves on, he does a few calls, and we cut to the next key caller. And this key caller is a watchman, and he just calls in to talk about the show, and he assumes he's going to complain about his job. You're a watchman? Can't you do any better than that? You just sit there and watch things. And then he says something that I think is kind of funny. He says, why can't you do better for yourself? Don't you see there's so much technological advancements? Your generation had it so much better than mine. Why don't you do better with your life? And I'm like, wow. People used to say that back then. Technology is so advanced, why don't you just do better? I mean, as someone who's grown up in the internet age, you get so many people older than you, why don't you just use the internet and be successful? As someone who runs a small YouTube channel, trust me, it's not that easy. You don't just go on the internet, get 1 million subscribers instantly, and enjoy fame and fortune. No, I mean, yes, the new technology is very nice and you can do things so much easier, but so can a lot of other people, and success is not guaranteed, you know? So, yeah, just the idea that back in '85, they're like, why aren't you doing better? There's so much technology. Yeah, talk about Darkside holding up and being ahead of its time. Gee whiz. But anyway, he calls this guy a loser. The watchman, he says, hey, you're just a watchman, you're a loser. And he goes, oh, I'm not the loser, you are, Mandrake. And he's like, what? A $4 an hour watchman's calling me a loser? And he's like, you know, you used to be fun, you changed, you're down and cranky with the world, and you're stuck behind the desk, you know? You're you know, living and doing a job that you hate, just like everyone else that's calling in is, and you don't see that, you know, they're complaining about their jobs, you don't like yours. And he has this good point of, oh, if you don't like the show, you know, you're the ones that listen to me. And he brings up this point of, who's really listening to who, you know? You think, oh, we're out there listening to you, but we can turn you off at any time. You're stuck behind that desk, and you have to take our calls. You're the one listening to us, and you're the one who's stuck there. So I thought that was a really fun and clever reversal, you know. We don't have to listen to the radio, but you have to listen to us. Really, you know, you're the bottom of the barrel here. So a fun, strange, you know, twist there. But anyway, after this call, he'll start to get a few stranger calls, and I won't spoil exactly what's going to happen later in the episode, but the idea that these calls bring in, it kind of suggests that, you know, these big human troubles are not only happening here and now, but everywhere for a long time, and it really does sort of amplify the idea of human suffering. But he also starts to notice things around him are starting to change. First, his equipment technician disappears, so he can't go to a commercial and he has to keep taking calls. But things around him are going to get more and more strange and mysterious, and it is going to build to a pretty cool revelation, and I won't spoil the end, but I love where it leaves the character in a very fitting place that, you know, it's not just a random out of nowhere comeuppance, it's something he made and earned, and boy, to see him there at the end, pretty nuts. Anyway, I definitely would recommend this episode. I mean, George Romero writing, but also Jerry Stiller coming in with a great performance, and another really good example of how to do a bottle episode. Darkside was so clever with its budget, and really, you know, you can make an entertaining half-hour time block with just Jerry Stiller and a microphone. That's pretty crazy. Anyway, definitely recommend it. To everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Tales from the Darkside playlist if you want to see me talk about more episodes. I've talked about all the past episodes of this show. And I've also done a Season 1 overview. I've covered the Joe Hill comic, and I covered the Christmas episodes. So if you want to see me talk about more Darkside, a playlist should pop up right here, and you can click on that. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Darkside playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.